It shouldn't take an act of God for Pensacola to make progress, but sometimes it seems like that's what it takes. 3 of the largest projects successfully undertaken in this community in the last 14 years, moving the Main Street sewer plant, building the community maritime park, and launching Rebuild Northwest Florida, were spurred into being in whole or in part by Hurricane Ivan. Talk had been swirling in the community for years about revitalizing the downtown waterfront and moving the stinky, polluting sewage treatment plant. From Festival Park to replacing Bayfront Auditorium, a core of people recognized that the city's greatest asset, its waterfront space, wasn't being fully utilized, and that the sewer plant was a big part of why that was the case. Lois Benson made moving the aging sewer plant out of the core of downtown a key point of her unsuccessful 2001 mayoral campaign. She lost, but she kept making the rounds of civic groups, talking up the idea that yes, it could be moved, even as the then director of the ECUA insisted it could never happen. She and others worked through Tallahassee to get an engineering study done. Preliminary plans were even drawn, but it took Ivan crippling the plant, sending sewage into homes and streets in downtown, to bring unshakable public and government consensus that it had to be moved now. Without Ivan, we might still be trying to prop up Bayfront Auditorium at the end of Palafox Street, a municipal facility with all the ambiance of a middle school gymnasium and the acoustics to match. After Ivan, plans that had been in the formative stages coalesced around the idea of a maritime museum, UWF classrooms and programming, a public park, and a baseball stadium with space for commercial businesses on what had been a weedy, polluted lot known to those who worked with the homeless as the Badlands. 10 years later, it is a showpiece for this community, notably without the involvement of the University of West Florida as originally promised, but it is growing daily with additional private investment. So now we need to ask ourselves, is this really what we want the price of progress to be in Pensacola? Do we want to be the place where it takes a hurricane to move forward? Do we want local government that has to be pushed this hard to move ahead? Rebuild has hardened more than 9,000 homes since it began as a group of concerned citizens trying to help those who couldn't afford to make storm-related repairs to their homes. Its funding comes from the federal government, which listened with open ears to private sector folks who said they could use mitigation money to help strengthen homes against the next future disaster. A group of interested citizens produced a thoughtful report full of suggestions about how to support and strengthen redevelopment in downtown Pensacola. Most came with minimal or no cost to implement, and the one that did have a big price tag, a state-of-the-art YMCA committed to working on community wellness, had a benefactor with a $5 million check ready to give on the line. Streamlining the code enforcement process, creating a cogent plan to market and sell vacant publicly owned property, implementing form-based land use and zoning guidelines, even taking down the utterly impotent Pensacola Technology Campus signage. Those things aren't expensive. They are the things that good government ought to do in the course of doing business, and yet they remain undone. 3 years ago, we had another disaster, this one man-made in the BP oil spill. It threatened one of the cornerstones of our economy, which is tourism, and the health of the Gulf itself, a place that many of us regard with a near spiritual devotion. From that disaster is coming a financial opportunity this community is not likely to see again for decades. The fine money that could flow here under the Restore Act is a pot of money we may not see for a generation. We cannot afford to mess this up. Failure is not an option. There will be a lot of hands out when that Restore money comes to town. There will be a lot of big ideas pitched. Some will be sound, some won't be worth the paper they're printed on. But in a community where the median income is $28,352, and for working women, by the way, it's $5,000 less than that, things that do the greatest good for the greatest number of people ought to be bumped to the head of the line. Don't let the Restore money become something that gets everyone's beak wet but slakes no one's thirst. Focus on building up the economy in areas that will lift the wage scale and diversify our economic climate. Remember how fragile those tar mats made our economy seem? Remember how even a little gift card promotion ended in recrimination, questions, lawsuits? Recent history indicates that government may be able to put gas in the tank, but we need focused citizens and private sector innovators to help steer the car. We can't keep waiting for a disaster to get into traffic and find our way forward. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Please remember to check us out online at progresspromise.com and keep on coming back. We'll see you next time. Thanks.